Welcome, Wanderers. My name is Serena, and I'm the Carolina Gypsy. Originally this week, I had a video planned introducing you to tarot. I just got a little caught up in a art experiment this week. Since I didn't have the time to make the tarot video, I thought this week instead I would just record some of my progress on this and talk to you about something else. But this will give you a chance to see some of my work. I was using one of my photos of Twin Falls as an inspiration for this art experiment, and this is a repurposed canvas I got off of a neighbor who was just looking to offload it. It was just sitting around their house. As the previous project was not one of my own and it was not complete, I did not record any of that part where I sanded the canvas. I tried to remove some of the lines and buildup from the previous paint, which was an acrylic, but because it had sat on the canvas for a couple years and it really set in, it had cured and hardened quite a bit. I'm going to add a little bit of white gesso just because I want it to be I don't want it to be heavy when I put it on these toadstools because they're very small. So I have a dry brush. I'm using a dry brush with a fine tip. If you have a wet brush, it makes your paint more fluid and so it flows a lot easier. And that's fine in some situations. That's exactly what you want. But on this dry canvas with these small objects, I'm just going to use the acrylic gesso in white because I just want to add a touch of white. I don't need the heavy copious amounts. So instead, I'm just going to play it safe. Just do a little dollop of the gesso and put a couple. There we go. Oh man, that was exactly a dollop. Good job. Waste not, want not. I don't like how bold those two are, but I don't want to smear them. There, just dab it with my finger. And there are areas where a little white would not be amiss, so I'm just going to add it here. If you get a little too much on your brush, just gently wiping off the excess before you touch your canvas is a great way to prevent a situation like that. I just didn't wipe enough off, so now I have to go back and adjust it. But for now, since I don't want to waste my white gesso, I'm going to use it to delicately add some details to my fall because I am using the dry brush, which is great for creating those fine lines as long as it isn't oversaturated with your paint. I wanted to have some of the ground visible underneath so that you could tell it wasn't just laying on top of the ground, that it was a very dynamic and rich environment. So for example, over here you can see where the water overlaps the soil to create kind of an illusion of shallows. I will have to go in with some white and varying blues, much like I'm doing here, to kind of draw out and create that texture and depth in the water, because otherwise it's just a flat blue. Well, if you start to create a little bit of movement within the water, which is subtle, white lines or varying shades of blue will imply that the light is refracting or reflecting, and that is much more similar to the way movement actually occurs within water. Just putting those very gentle strokes. You want to try to keep the pressure in an area where you want the saturation to be. So for example, I've got a fresh brush tip here. See how much more came off of the brush. Light reflecting in the pool here, especially on the edges, to kind of break up any muddiness from where the blue and the brown met. occasionally when you're blending those paints, it will not always be a smooth transition. You're going to have to go back over it. We're not all Bob Ross. We're not all super art gods. This guy right here is going to be a rock or a root, but I need it to break up some lines that appear from the previous art piece. I'm going to start breaking up those lines now with a little bit of the water flow, creating direction as it's cutting around the rock. Is going to be a great opportunity for me to take care of this line that is being created here with a heavy stroke from the previous piece. So when the water comes down, it would catch this rock and create a hard stream that would probably hit it right about here. Depending on what's up here, it may also send a chute right here. So what I want to do is just create a little bit of flow here. And this gives me a chance to just kind of add a little bit of mist that's going to break up those lines that are bothering me. This is a similar thing that I take to my approach to spirituality, is that I can't always fix the whole problem. Shadow work is not a one and done sort of thing. When you're working on yourself and the less appealing aspects of your personality, those are very hard things to look at sometimes. Often, when people make us angry, it's not so much them, but it's our subconscious responding to something that they're doing because we see ourselves in that. It's easier to attack a stranger than to attack yourself. So when you get annoyed at somebody for something that they do, a lot of times it can be fueled by your own issues. Instead of trying to fix the entire problem or lashing out and raging at someone, for example, for cutting you off in traffic, I try to look at why I responded the way I did. Don't get me wrong, sometimes the other person's just a jerk. I'm not giving people a license to be a jerk. Let's see, this already looks so much better. Let's see, in that rock, I need to add a little bit more texture, some different colors. Maybe. I don't even know that I need to do that. It looks pretty good right now. The areas that have thin paint here where you can still see the canvas, that's just lazy artwork to me. And it's because the stroke, I wasn't applying a lot of pressure. I didn't need to because I knew I was going to be coming back over it with the other stuff. But as I'm working on it, these are the areas I want to make sure I don't forget. So since I have just a little bit of the white gesso still liquid here, I'm just going to create a little bit of texture to start filling some of that in. All right, now I'm going to work on the little fairy houses in the toadstool cul-de-sac. I like this strip of green that came up here, and I feel like it would make a really nice front stoop or stairway up to this fairy house. So I'm going to start with the one right here. I want to have a fairy house here, a fairy house kind of here facing the toadstools, and maybe one over here. I want the fairy houses to be bright and colorful, but I still want them to kind of look like they belong. So we're going to add some yellow here to this and bring in a golden sort of glow to get that orange that I was seeking. But right now it looks really nice. I think that that's going to complement the toadstools and kind of make them pop to where you notice them a little more. I'm going to try unbleached titanium and see what that does. I have foregone the dollop and gone with a full-on splat. Are you taking notes? These terms will be on the test. I'm gonna go in and do the windows for the fairy townhouses over here. I've got a yellow out and I don't need to pour any. I have a dry brush and I'm just going to make sure all of the bristles are together there. Squeeze it just a little. Just want a dot. I'm going to do the lines that are the trees. This sponge is still a little wet from earlier, and I'm just going to take one of the corners. Lots of different textures and clusters can be created with a sponge, especially one that's wet. This one is just damp. So while it is smearing and blending, it's actually staying very much close to the surface. This is fine. I'm going to test right here because this is not the area I'm working on, and if it's ugly, I can fix it later. See, that's good, a nice sporadic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this here and just start adding some richness to the top of the bush. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this little glimpse into what I'm up to this week and a peek into my process. I really don't share this. I'm just recently putting myself out there more. This is the more intuitive way that I create. Hopefully next week will be a more consistent sort of video. The fairy village is not quite done, and I didn't get to the cairn. Life gets complicated, and while trying to work on my own things, I still have a house full of people and pets that have demands. But I am actively making an effort to follow my passions and to consistently make me a priority, even though it feels a bit selfish sometimes. Thanks for coming along. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you on the next. Brightest blessings, y'all.